Welcome to In Focus. I'm your host, Lina Naranjo. Today we have a global academic leader and standing Cal State Fullerton University President, President Ronald Rochon, having over 30 years dedicated to advancing access and excellence in higher education. Rochon's work as a strategic visionary has involved initiatives of commitment to bridging cultural gaps and promoting academic growth around the world. Here to share his vision for Cal State Fullerton and the transformative power of education, we welcome President Ronald Rochon. How are you doing today, President?
You know what, being in your presence, Lena, I'm doing well. It's been a great day. It's beautiful outside. I walked over here and I got to engage with some students, which makes me happy all the time. And then being welcomed by you makes me feel even better. So thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for allowing me to be here on your show. Thank you.
Yeah, it's an honor. I mean, you talked about just coming into the studio just now.
Yeah.
I love the energy that you bring.
Oh, thanks
I know
a lot.
we've met before, and I was telling you before the show that when I started with In Focus, I thought to myself, I need to get President Rochon in the show.
Oh, wonderful.
And I'm so glad that we have you in the studio now.
I'm
thank
humbled
you.
and honored. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, can you tell me a little bit about your journey to your career in higher education?
Yeah, sure. It's not very exciting. I took a very traditional route. I will tell you this first, though. I'm a first-generation college attendee. My mom and dad, weren't able to go to college, not because they weren't bright, just didn't have resources. Didn't have access to that opportunity. And so my mother and father really committed, to making sure that all three. I'm the oldest of three. That all three of us not only had an opportunity, but we fulfilled that mission. And so going to Tuskegee University is a small, historically beautiful college in Alabama. And I'm a product of Tuskegee. I'm a product of HBCUs. And it really opened my eyes. I'll tell you, Lena, going to Tuskegee taught me things about life that I never even imagined possible. For the first time in my life, I saw Black farmers. And where I grew up in Illinois and Chicago, when we go on road trips, you see farms, but you never saw Black people, especially owning a farm. Cultivating and managing and producing. And that was something brand new for me at Tuskegee. I saw for the first time, a Black elected officials. I saw Black police officers in the multitude. I saw Black professors teaching and providing instruction and advice. And so this narrative opened my eyes up to all kinds of potential possibilities for me. I went from Tuskegee to University of Illinois to pursue my master's and my PhD. And then I began my career at Texas A&M as a professor. And I moved on to other universities throughout my career, really kind of advancing administratively with experiences and with new initiatives in my life. And I finally got to a point, even in graduate school, that I knew one day I wanted to be a university president. It was a dream of mine. And it's funny because, my friends and my advisor always ask, why? And I don't know that I had a great answer when I was young, other than that I really wanted to open doors for other people. And that's what I saw the president is doing. And as I age and mature, I understood more clearly that it was true, that a president, that she or he really does have the opportunity to open doors for candidates. And that's all I was. On the south side of Chicago, someone saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. And I sit here before you today because of people pouring into me and allowing me an opportunity to develop, to engage, to mature, and to fulfill my dream.
I love that. And just being able to, in your shoes, be able to provide opportunities for students is really empowering to see. And, can you tell me what kind of drove you? I'm sure that process wasn't easy, right? There's a lot of hard work that has to go behind that. So can you tell me what drove you to just keep going and pushing through?
Without question, my mother and father, but I give my father a lot of love. My father was the disciplinarian in the house, but my mother, she's no longer with us. She's deceased. I tell folks, I'm a mama's boy, and I tell people, if you don't know what a mama's boy is, you Google it, you see my picture, big smile on my face, boy. But my mother, she really pushed me hard in unique ways, even when I didn't see promise in myself. She gave me confidence. She gave me this kind of nurturing love and affirmation. And she had dreams of her own, but but she gave all she had to me and my sister and my brother, everything she had. And I tell folks, if you are blessed to have a loving mother, there's nobody like it. And listen, I'm a daddy. I believe in fathers, but there's something special about mothers. There's just something that's non-negotiable about a mother's love. No matter what you have done, no matter what mistake you've made, she knows that her child can do better with the kind of support and affirmation and resources that are necessary. And that was my mother with all three of her children, just finding ways in which we could just continue to find a way out of nowhere at times, And so, I'll tell you right now, my father's still alive. We talk all the time. In fact, his birthday was just the other day. And I called to tell him thank you, for all that he did to sacrifice, his life for me and my siblings and for my mom. And I'm just appreciative. I'm an appreciative human being. I wake up every morning and I thank God for another day to serve, to work with students, to work with my colleagues. The faculty and staff here are exciting. They're kind, they're engaged. I just met, another colleague just coming into your studio. And so, to have that kind of energy all around us, it's more than a blessing. It is something we should never take for granted, Right. So that's how I feel.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad to hear that you like the environment here at Cal State Fullerton.
Well,
you bring the energy, like I told you. I love it. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm happy.
I'm happy to have you.
Thank you.
I know a lot of students are really happy to have you here, and be a leader for students here at Cal State Fullerton. So, and you talked about being a first generation student.
Yes.
Can you talk to me a little bit about the challenges you faced during that time?
Yeah, I remember them like yesterday. This is why I really am trying to address this first generation population with such sincerity, because I know my first day at Tuskegee, I was so scared, so nervous. And it wasn't just about being, just having this kind of a nervous stomach, but I was afraid that someone was going to discover me and discover that I did not belong. Discover the fact that everyone around me, and I mean everyone around me, was smarter than me. And I was worried about that. I was worried about letting my mother and my father down. They didn't have much money, but they did give me what they did have for tuition. And I didn't want to, waste their time or their money, but I was worried that someone would say, how did he get here? And how do we get him back to Chicago? And I found out that the faculty and staff were just the opposite. Many of them resonated with my story. Many of them had a very similar story. And many of them poured into me time, love, concern, hard talks, and also high expectations, were provided. So I want to tell every first generation student that you are worthy, that you belong, that you are not an imposter, and most importantly, that you can succeed. We need your voice. We need your ideas, your creativity. We need you to be a part of this democracy that we live in. And I want every first generation, every second generation, every third, I want us all to understand that we truly are worthy people.
Yeah, and I think that's really nice to hear. I know here at Cal State Fullerton, there are over 30% of students who are first-generation students.
Ma'am.
So thank you for sharing that. And you talked a little bit about having that, I guess, self-doubt, right, when you first entered the education.
Yes.
How did you kind of get over that?
Well, I don't know that I have fully gotten over it at times. I think that at times I still suffer from imposter syndrome.
Right.
Even as a president, I'll get around other people and I have to remind myself that I am because of the South Side of Chicago, not in spite of. And what I mean by that is that, quite often when many of us come from communities, both urban and rural in particular, that are underserved or under-resourced, quite often we begin to hear this narrative about our communities. So for example, this weekend, I was watching a football game and there was a commentator speaking about a young man who was a football player at a college, well-branded university. And he said, this kid is from the South Side of Chicago. And he began to talk about his mother who was killed in gun violence. And immediately, I think that quite often many people who have never been to the South Side believe that it's a synonym for gun violence or death or kids who are not in compliance. And I would argue just the opposite, that many of the constructs that have been constructed about urban communities in particular that may in fact have a higher level of troubled young people, it's not because they come out of their mother's womb troubled. It's because we have not provided the resources, the avenues, the opportunities for them to find their space, their journey, their dream, their avenue. So I place the onus on my shoulders and others like me for us to find ways in which we get those resources to young people who have promise and creativity all throughout their DNA. That's our job, and I believe in it, really do.
And now that you're president here at Cal State Fullerton, what are some of the goals or visions that you hope to implement?
Yeah, you know, I have not had the opportunity to get, to the city of LA yet. You know, I'm interested in learning more about the city. I'm interested in learning more about San Diego. I'm interested in learning more about Orange County. Right. So I've given you 3 communities just now, right? And I'm so new here. I'm still learning California. Right. But I know that each of those communities is very different. You know, with regard to resources, with regard to geography, to topography, everything, right? But I know there's some similarities between people. This I know. I know that there are people, no matter in urban, rural, suburban communities, we all have these dreams and aspirational goals to do better, to care for our children, to love on our families, to bring a good meal home every day, and also to have safety around us. There's nothing unique about that. I don't care what your race or ethnicity may be or what your zip code may be. We all have this in common. And so trying to find ways in which I can bring people together, building bridges to new communities so that we can have relationships and friendships with folks we don't know. You know, you and I were just speaking about Spanish, for example. Right. You know, to hear you speak about your ability to be bilingual is a blessing to me. I'm monolingual. You know, I didn't grow up in a community where we were able to celebrate other languages. In fact, I remember, you know, when I was a boy, language arts was the non-negotiable. English was it. And so I may have told you this, you know, but my grandmother, you know, she grew up speaking Spanish and was told at one point in her life that she should no longer speak Spanish. And so our family lost a language that we once held, you know. I should say that my mother and my father and his sister, my auntie, that they held. You know, I want to find ways in which we celebrate difference. Yeah. We're not intimidated by it, that we embrace it and we respect it, we welcome it into our lives. Meeting you and understanding your story as briefly as you described it makes me feel more empowered and more enriched. And I believe that if we do this, we find commonalities, we find an opportunity to celebrate each other, and also we find that we have so much in common that we respect each other even more with sincerity. With authentic sincerity.
I love that. And thank you so much for sharing that. And you talk about community. I think that's super, super important, especially for students here at Cal State Fullerton. It's really what creates opportunity, right? So how do you hope to, you know, lift up the community, the Titan community here for students? Yeah,
it's a great question. You know, I will tell you that I've learned this, that there is, I don't know if it's overt, you know, I would even maybe describe it as clandestine. A bit clandestine, and that's the racial tension that we even have on our own campus. You know, I've learned that there is lack of trust, you know, among different identity groups. I've learned that there is this tension about who gets what, who has more, who's more significant, you know. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that publicly. I want to bring thought leaders from different identity groups together to talk about not just their group, but the other group. Or the other groups. You know, I really firmly believe that the more we talk about others in a very healthy way where we are providing support and resources, it will come back to us tenfold. It really will. You know, when you show this kind of intentional love and concern, it really does pay dividends. And for me, where it pays dividends the most is for our children. Because our children are what? You are, right? You know, you are a young woman, but for children, you are an old person, okay? Yeah. You know, you're a big sister, you're an auntie, you're a mentor. You know, you are someone that the children look up to. And so they are watching how you and I interact with one another. They're listening to how we speak to each other. They're listening and observing how, and if we have fellowship together, if we break bread together, you know, if we truly are sincerely interested in one another. So when you ask me about, you know, about how I see this with the community, I firmly believe that we do this collectively with intentionality of building bridges.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that because, as I mentioned to you earlier, I do have a younger brother. He's 13. So to him, he's like, oh my gosh, Lena is old. She's old.
Exactly,
She's old.
exactly.
And I think things are always changing. So for them to see, for us to have the opportunity to demonstrate that, I think it's super, super important. Now I want to shift gears a little bit. I want to go back to, I want to go back to your leadership roles. You've had multiple leadership roles. And can you tell me a little bit more about that experience and how it's molded you into the person that you are today?
Wow. Well, actually, tomorrow I'll be leaving for a conference in Puerto Rico. I belong to the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, also known as ASCU. And ASCU is an amazing association that's housed in Washington, D.C., and it really becomes kind of like this policy umbrella for higher education, where university presidents can rely upon one another. Well, right now I serve as chair of the association, and because of my colleagues allowing me to do this, I have had a brand new kind of leadership role at the national level, and it's been one that I have been humbled by and have appreciated so much. And I'll tell you, I've grown so much this past year because of my colleagues who have again poured into me. Having presidents who are accessible to provide guidance and counsel, advice, but also an uplifting message is huge. Having someone you can vent to, you can confide in is quite significant. I will tell you that being a part of the association and having this national platform means a great deal to me, not because of prestige, but because of temporary voice. One of my dear friends, his name is Clifton Tanabe. I remember Cliff told me, he said, Ron, whenever you have the opportunity to speak to an audience, always do your very best to be prepared, because this moment of them listening is rare. This moment of you having a voice is rare. And we should never take advantage or take advantage of or take for granted this opportunity of having a voice. And so I tell all my colleagues, at Cal State Fullerton, I came here to do my job, but I do recognize that I'm a temporary steward. I'm not going to be president forever, and nor should I be. But while I'm here, I want to make sure that I respect that office, I do right by that office, and also I do right by the audiences that I address, that I speak to, that I lead with. Very, very significant to me.
Yeah, and there's a lot of student leaders here on campus as well. What advice do you have for them when, navigating certain projects and maybe how they can improve on their leadership skills?
Yeah, I think one of the greatest attributes for healthy leaders and healthy leadership is being a good listener. Being a great observer, paying attention to the room, recognizing where talent resides, where hard work resides, where struggle resides, recognizing where you can actually help mend some gaps, build bridges, and also find resources to assist people in getting their job done. Listen, leadership for me it's an amazing thing, but leaders are nothing without constituents, without people. And listen, I'm not talking about followership. I'm not talking about I'm not talking about being an iconic voice. I'm talking about being a leader where you are strategically placing people in the right position to get the job done. You, young lady, are brilliant.
Thank you.
You're smarter than the president. You are. I mean that. But the one thing that I am that you are not yet, I'm a bit wiser than you. I'm much older than you are. So I've lived life. I've seen books. I've read stories. I've lived chapters, right? And you are just like the 13-year-old brother you have. You're wiser than he is. You know where he should or should not go because you've been there before. And so what do we do as leaders in providing people with greater access to do the job, to serve the community, to uplift the institution? That's the job of a leader. And that's what it excites me to provide that kind of voice and input.
Yeah, and I think it's so nice to see how passionate you are for what you do, and you've done it for so long now, and I think it's really nice to see. Now you talk about reading the room, right?
Yeah.
How do you go about that? Because I feel like as students, we always hear that phrase of like, read the room.
Yeah.
How do you do that, or how do you kind of read that room?
One of the things, I came in here and I met your colleagues, I shook hands, I felt healthy energy, but also I felt some nervousness, the first time the president's here. Mm-hmm. And what I want to do, I want to see if I could, through reading the room my way, could maybe deflate that nervousness. Making people understand that, number one, I'm a guest in your house. Your house. You are the expert. You have prepared. You have done the research. You created these queries. This is your space. And we need to understand that we are simply guests in every space that we visit. Even when you're the president, you're still a guest. You're an invited guest. And how humbling is that? And so you need to seek permission. You need to understand that the room is not belong to you. And if you look, Lena, check this out. If you go across this entire university, there's now one room named Dr. Rochon. This university is called Cal State Fullerton for a reason. And so I think that we as leaders need to humble ourselves and understand that we've been invited for a reason. And for me, my goal is to be invited back again. And when you bring the right kind of healthy, respectful energy, I think that you have a greater probability of that happening.
You talk about being invited again. I'm like, don't worry, you'll be back. Don't worry. Okay. And how do the lessons that you've learned from your leadership roles? Yeah. How do you have to, tie those into your position as a president, or just, from everything else that you've experienced?
Again, I'll tell you. I was saying I've got a brand new chief of staff. Her name is Nina Garcia, and Nina and I were talking earlier, about one's ability to move up this ladder, this kind of trajectory of upward mobility professionally, right? And if you look at my Vita, you'll see accomplishments. The one thing you don't see, Lena, is all my failures. And so I'll tell you, the failures that I've experienced in life are as, if not more significant than the successes, because every failure has taught me a lesson. Every single time that I have faltered or fallen short, I've learned something, and it's made me stronger and made me better.
I love all the quotes you've just given us. It's so good. It's so good. And what initiatives are you most passionate about implementing to support underrepresented students here?
Again, it's building confidence, building space, building relevancy, building majors and programs that students will want to seek, but also building programming, making sure that we have faculty and staff in place that want to embrace students who are underrepresented, students who may be coming from a first-generation family. How do we do this intentionally with great effort? And then the other piece, oh, by the way, the best part of this, though, is using someone, from your peer group who has experienced the same thing to now be the step to become a mentor, to embrace that new generation of students coming in next fall, giving them some aspects, some understanding, some indication of what it was like last year through their nervousness, through their imposter syndrome, finding their space, they're finding their footing, finding their confidence, and finding friendship. Friendship is important with our success. So I'm excited about, finding spaces in which we can enhance that for sure.
Yeah, and I want to touch on the imposter syndrome really quickly.
Please.
As a president, there's just so much responsibilities that come with that role. When you're in that mindset of just combating that imposter syndrome, how do you deal with that? How do you navigate that? And what advice do you have for students? Because I know, like myself, I deal with that, right?
Let me say this to you. And I said it before, but I'll say it again. You are worthy. I tell students, and I mean this about you, when I talked to you the very first time, I want you to know that when you walk through the door, excellence is walked through the door. Brilliance is walked through the door. Worthiness is walked through the door. Lena is walked through the door.
Thank you.
And so, so we need to make sure we're communicating that to all of our candidates, right? And making sure that they not only, hear that and can articulate it, but they believe it. That's important.
Awesome. And before we wrap up today, President Rochon, is there anything else you'd like to add or any advice you may have for students?
Yeah, that's a huge question. Let me quickly say, number one, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. Yeah. You are amazing, young lady.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here with you. Let me just ask you to help me communicate to our community the significance of being kind, being civil, and also being intentional with your ability to listen to someone else, especially those who disagree with you or have a different view than yours. There are ways in which we can teach our children how to disagree with civility. And right now, let me say this to you. My optimism, my hope, my joy resides in you and your peers. I'm ready to hand you the baton, and you're ready to receive it. We need more Lenas across this globe. Did you hear me? Across the globe. So thank you for who thank you for what you do, and thank you for who you are. And also, I give a shout out to your family as well.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
All right. Thank you, Lena.
Thank you. Thank you again for coming on here. And I just can't wait to see all the, how can you uplift the Titan family? Because I know, like I said, you're very passionate for what you do, and I'm just super excited for all of us here at Cal State Fullerton to see.
Well, I'm fortunate too, and we'll do it together.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, President Rochon.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, that looks like that's all for us today. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to those who are tuning in today. It was a pleasure for having President Rochon. Thank you so much. And stay tuned for more insightful conversations, and thank you for being part of today's discussion. I'm your host, Lina Naranjo. Until next time.